pleasure for me to introduce to you here Mr. Benjamin Ferencz. Ben has joined us here today. This is his first time at Brandeis University. And he has joined us here today because his foundation, the Planethood Foundation, has given us a generous grant to launch an oral history project that is looking into the early years of the ad hoc tribunals, that is the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda. And who better to interview than someone who is actually the face of international criminal law and justice. Ben was there at the beginning. In fact, he launched the beginning of international criminal justice at Nuremberg, and he has seen it through the 20th century and into the 21st century. And at the age of 95, he is still extremely active in advocating for the criminalization of the act of aggression, for war making. So what our plan here is informal. Ben will make some remarks, and then I think he would be happy to take questions from the audience. Let me just say that he is here in Boston not only to come to Brandeis. He's piggybacking a little bit and coming here, but he was at Harvard Law School today. He's a 1943 alum of Harvard Law, and he was just awarded the Freedom Award.
Something like that.
Something like that. And the only other person who's ever gotten it is Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
And tomorrow he is on a panel discussion after the screening of a new film. It's part of the Jewish Film Festival. It's, I can't remember the title.
Watcher of the Skies. Watchers of the Skies.
Watchers of the Skies. And it's about Raphael Lemkin, the person who defined the concept of genocide. And Ben is actually featured in this film, along with Samantha Power. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor to you, Ben. You can sit or you can stand, whatever you like.
They won't know that if I'm standing or sitting. However, you have no microphone, so I'll have to speak nice, loud, and clear. Am I messing up the camera work if I walk up and down here? Keep from freezing?
I'm sure not.
All right. Well, that's a pretty broad agenda here. How much time do you want me to talk to them?
It's up to you.
As long as I want it. Yeah, supper time. Well, I had a little schmooze with some of the people here, not all of them, some of the freshmen here in the first row, some of the people in the back, and they have very wide-ranging questions. And so what I'll tell you about is briefly the story of how I got here, because that might be of some interest to some of you. I was born in a little village in Transylvania. Now don't tell me you have friends in Pittsburgh. Transylvania is a country which no longer exists. My sister was born in the same house as I was, the same bed, and she's Hungarian. When I was born a year and a half later, I was a Romanian. The moral of the story is, it doesn't matter what they call the country. What does matter is how you behave and how the people are treated in the country. And in this particular instance, both the Romanians and the Hungarians persecuted the Jews no matter what. And my family, two young people in their early 20s with two little babies, set sail for the United States of America, the land of freedom, in December of 1920. Cold of December, sleeping on the deck because they had to travel third class because there was no fourth class. And they had no money of any kind. Landed in New York Harbor, not speaking the language, not being able to find a job because what my father had been trained for, a shoemaker, to make boots out of cow's hide. There were no cows in New York, and nobody wore no boots, and nobody told them about that. And when they asked him to look at the machine and work on the electrical machine, he couldn't read the instructions, didn't know what they were talking about. So he was happy to get a job as a janitor, and where he could put his family to sleep in the basement, in the cellar. And that's where I began, in this country. However, it's a land of great opportunity, as you can see, and in due course, I went to the Harvard Law School. And got a scholarship. I'm an exam on criminal law. And this morning I was meeting with the dean of the divinity school. And I was reminding him, very nice gentleman, that when I was a student at the law school, I had no money. And in order to prevent myself from starving, which was not very convenient, I went to the divinity school cafeteria. And I asked them if they had some work that I could do to earn my food. And they said, sure, you come in at 2 o'clock every day and clean up the tables and help, unload the dishes, or whatever food is left, help yourself. So I was able to go in and work only 2 days a week or so and eat enough to last me for 2 weeks. And when I left law school and eventually began to earn some money, I began to pay for my lunches. And I felt a little guilty about having eaten all those lunches for free. And they put me on their donor list. And they then began sending me their divinity school bulletins. And I began reading them. And they were very good. They were very ecumenical, and some of the poetry I didn't quite get. But I got their bulletins, and I felt that they owed me a degree in divinity. All that studying. And he thought I was going to ask him for a degree in divinity. But I said, no, I just want him to help me to advance an idea which one of his boys probably was familiar with, and that was the idea which came from this Jewish boy from Jerusalem about having peace in the world, love thy neighbor and all that. And I was delighted to find that he shared my view that it was very important that we try to create an international system of some kind which would assure greater peace and humanity to all people. And when I was still at the law school, the war broke out. I tried to get into various branches of the service, and eventually I was accepted by the Army as a private in the artillery. At that time I had my law degree and passed the bar. And I fought in every campaign. After 3 years, I was given an honorable discharge as a sergeant of infantry and 5 battle stars for not having been killed in the major battles of the war. From the beaches of Normandy to the final battle of the Bulge. And so that came in very useful because they couldn't say I was unpatriotic. After all, I had given 3 years of my life to my country. And they couldn't say I was an idiot because I was a graduate of the Harvard Law School. And they would say maybe I was crazy, but they couldn't say I was stupid. Well, with that kind of a background, I had 4 children. They were normal, which meant they were on the verge of insanity. That was a time of temporary insanity, I was assured by the psychiatrist. When they're adolescents, he says, a time of temporary insanity. And all you have to do is be patient with them. And eventually, I could see the parents here saying, yes, 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 yes. Eventually, they'll outgrow it. So tell your parents not to give up hope. Have authoritative opinion that there was still hope in the future. Well, at that point, I decided the war was over, we had won. I went home, stowed away on a ship. Bing Crosby said I'd be home by Christmas. I'm going to make a liar out of Bing Crosby. So, and I was honorably discharged. And I went to look for a job. Well, the Army suddenly discovered that they better get a hold of me, because the last few months of the war, I had been assigned to General Patton's headquarters with an assignment to set up a war crimes branch. They had no idea what that meant. And that meant that AWOL, or absent without leave, or conduct unbecoming an officer, or crime, knew nothing about war crimes, crimes against humanity, stuff like that. So I became the first man in the American Army, I believe, to work on war crimes. That took me through many different phases. First was the Allied flyer cases, where Allied planes were shot down, including by my outfit, the 115th AAA Gun Battalion. We would shoot down American and British planes, not deliberately, but because somebody goofed somewhere along the line. And you have that problem today when you shoot down a Dutch airline that kills 200. I know how that happened because I was going around picking out pieces of the flyer. Lucky to find a finger. We could identify somebody. We don't find the pieces anymore. When it hit, that thing blows up and explodes, you know. So I came to the conclusion from my observations, also as a liberator of many concentration camps. My job was to get into the camps as the troops were going in. Buchenwald was the first camp. And you find the scene, which some of you may have seen, and those who haven't should. Dead bodies all over the place, people in rags, starved to death, rats, diarrhea, every disease conceivable. Get in and get out. Get out as quick as you can. I'd get in and go to the office, try to seize the records of who was in the camp, who were the officers in charge, photographs. Signal call came in, take photographs, medical call came in, try to save whatever lives it could. And quite horrible. Horrible is the only word for it. I peered into hell. So that, of course, left me with an indelible impression. And I don't want to spoil your evening, so I won't go into that much deeper. But I, at a certain point, decided I was going to dedicate the remainder of my life to trying to create a more humane and peaceful world. And when I was invited to come back to Nuremberg in order to join in the prosecution of Nazi war criminals, which took place after World War II, I was assigned to prosecute special murder squads. They had a secret name which none of the Americans can pronounce, Einsatzgruppen. Their job was to go behind the German lines and eliminate, they never said murder, eliminate all the Jews, men, women, and children, and all the gypsies. And that's what they did. About 3,000 men following behind the German lines, all trained, round them up by the local police, drive them, in the case of Pavia, for example, 33,771 Jews marched out to a ditch, thrown into the ditch, machine gun dropped into the ditch, covered over with a layer of dirt. Next, and I tabulated the results of that. Those reports, wrote daily reports, secret reports to their headquarters. I told over 1 million people murdered that way, and said we've got to go on trial with this. And we had not planned that trial. And I spoke to General Taylor, Telford Taylor, Harvard alumnus, and he was chief of counsel. Later we were law partners after the war. And I said, we've got to put on a trial. He said, we can't do it. We don't have authorization from the Pentagon. We have a limited number of staff. They're already working on the cases. There's no funding for it. I said, we've got to put on this trial. I wouldn't let him go. And he said, can you do it in addition to your other work? I was collecting evidence of all of the trials. I said, sure. Okay. He said, you got it. So I became the chief prosecutor of the biggest murder trial in human history. It was my first case. I was 27 years old. So I don't know how old you are. You all look like you're 15 to me. Of course, you're 16. Well, the moral of that story is you never know which way the wind is going to blow, you know. Out of a cradle which was no cradle, which was a rug, you know, a mattress or whatever, I was born in a little village in poverty and grown up that way, to end up as the chief prosecutor in the biggest murder trial in history is quite a thing. And the record of that trial still stands. And you'll see some of that in the film. I'll tell you about the film in a minute, but you may not see it. But the film trial itself was filmed in part, at least. And I made the point that vengeance was not our goal. What we're trying to do was to create a world order in which all human beings could live in peace, human dignity, regardless of their race or creed. Because They were murdered because they didn't share the race or the religion or the ideology of their executioners. And I thought that was a horrible thing then, and I still think so today. And I have never changed my view on that subject. And I've been trying as one person to change it. And it's hard to do, because in order to change it, I need you. It can't be done by old people anymore. It takes too long. We've got to change the way people think. Because we have all been raised to glorify war making. The greatest thing in law is to die for your country. Was it Nathan Hale said, I regret I have only one head to give for my country. If I had two heads, I would do one more gladly. We have glorified killing. We have glorified nationalism. We have glorified, God bless our country, help the rest of the world. That doesn't fly anymore. The world is shrinking. You have the little handheld gadgets, which I don't understand, which drive me crazy. But you are now becoming an integrated world. The time will come fairly soon, in terms of, 50 years is a blink in the eye of time. The time will come when there is no such thing as illiteracy. When the people in Africa, the people in Latin America, will be wanting to share on an equitable basis the resources of the world. I wrote a little book called Planethood. The theme of that is that we are all inhabitants of one small planet, and we must learn to live on this planet together in peace and human dignity, regardless of our race or creed. That was the Planethood theme. No longer think in terms of neighborhood or nationhood, but planethood. And that little book was encouraged and published really by a man who was quadriplegic. He couldn't stand. He had to be turned over in bed every night, every few hours. He could only move one hand, and he was full of life and love. He had developed paralysis when he was an adult, and he was an inspiration. He wrote books on how to love, how to live, how to be happy, and so on. So hope never dies, even when the body is sick, and so on. Anyway, that's by way of background. Some of you have asked me, one of you have asked me, what was the attitude of the German public? The German public at the time of the trials was victor's justice. We also suffered. Where they were concerned with getting a place for shelter, we bombed the hell out of them. A place for food, bread was rationed, everything was rationed. They didn't pay much attention to the trials. They didn't like the trials. They felt insulted by the trials. And in general, our attitude as Americans was, well, too bad for you. I don't give a damn what you think. How is the attitude today in Germany? It's remarkable, in a way. And the sign of, I stayed on in Germany after the trials to negotiate treaties with Germany on behalf of a number of organizations and the state of Israel to provide compensation, rehabilitation, and restitution to the Nazi victims of all faiths. And the German government, fairly recently, a few years ago, said they wanted to give me their highest civilian award, their Medal of Merit, first class, which is very rare in Germany. And I had some hesitation about accepting it because I thought the victims would say, why are you accepting a decoration from people who murdered our parents and so on? And I discussed that with several groups of victims, survivors. My own mind, which was finally accepted, I was just conferring with them, it was up to me to decide, was that it would be unfair to hold the children responsible for the crimes of their fathers. And it would be an insult to the new young German generation, which had been so helpful in connection with restitution, as inadequate as it may have appeared to the victims. And so I accepted the medal. And When I'm in Germany, I wear a little stick pin. It's the only time I wear it, really. But it's a reflection that people change too, that attitudes change too. And the times have changed. And I'm sure that the system which we now have, of where the heads of state are unable to agree, what do? They send out young people like you to kill other young people like you, whom you don't even know, who may have never harmed anybody, and your instructions are you kill them, or they kill you. It's a crazy system, my friends. It's crazy. You're the victim, not me. I've had my turn. I've seen how that system works in action. There must have been 100 million people died in World War II. Nobody knows the count. I don't care who counts it. I've seen thousands of people thrown into ditches, you know, and how many died of a broken heart, how many died of disease, how many died of hunger in all of this. So the war system is insane. It's absolutely insane. And how do you change it when it's been so long indoctrinated as a heroic and wonderful thing? Well, I'm a lawyer. I turn to the criminal law to say people are responsible for using armed force illegally, which means in violation of the UN Charter, not in self-defense, and not as ordered by the Security Council. They're committing a crime. And it's a crime against humanity because it threatens everyone. And it should be condemned as a crime against humanity and punished as a crime against humanity. Not because we want to fill the jails with more prisoners, we have enough, but as a deterrent. If they know they may end up in jail, they are more inclined to try to avoid committing those particular acts. At the moment, we have not yet reached that point. The crime of aggression is not punishable in the International Criminal Court nor in national courts, because they say it hasn't been defined. It's a lot of baloney. It's been defined again and again. They just don't want to accept it because they don't want to be bound by any foreign court on the important decision when they will act in their own national interest. What can you do about it? I can't do any more than I'm doing. I'm writing a lot of stuff. My website is my name. It's on a program here somewhere if you have it. It's my name, Ben Ferencz, which is a Hungarian name, incidentally. The same name Pope Francis has. It's the name Francis Ferencz in Hungarian. Everything on my website is free. Lots of books, articles, DVDs, BVDs, I don't know what. It's all there. Take it, use it, no compensation. Everything is free. Plagiarize it, I don't care. And if you got a better idea, let me know. When I talk to the military, as I often do, I make plain to them that I'm there because I don't want to see them coming home in body bags. I don't want to see them coming home in pods. And they know I mean it. They give me standing ovations. And that's important because the public image of the United States has unfortunately sunk to a new low. After World War II, oh, they loved Americans. Boy, any place you went, they grabbed you, they kissed you, they hugged you. Today, you're an American, you be quiet. They want to know, why did you? So why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So it's painful to me as a really patriotic American, and I appreciate the opportunity that I have here to see that. But that will change too. Our political system is such that treaties require 2/3 consent of the Senate, 2/3 consent of a Senate which is conservative even to a small degree. Is hardly attainable to the present count of the conservatives in the Senate. We're not going to look for any treaties which are going to change the fundamental approach to war and peace and harmony and so on. So that's the story of what I do. I used to be 7 feet tall, but this wore me down. And that's what I hope you will do someday in your own way. Everybody has a role to play. Do it best you can. You may not solve all, you won't solve all the problems of the world, but you can move the rock up the hill a bit. And we do have international criminal courts. My interview here today was about special international courts set up by the Security Council for crimes in Yugoslavia, crimes in Rwanda, and crimes in other parts of the world are now beginning to flourish. And the world is beginning to recognize that my slogan is valid, and my slogan on my website is law, not war. And that seems to me to be absolutely correct. And that's followed by 3 other pieces of advice that I give you now. Never give up is the first one, never give up is the second, and never give up is the third. And if you follow that, you'll do fine. I'll take your questions. Ask me good questions.
So anyone
Whoever
can-
asks good questions get a flyer. What do you want?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you a question about your feelings today. Anti-Semitism is flourishing, unfortunately, in Europe, and it seems that the one country in Europe where the Jewish population seems to be flourishing is in Germany. No, but France has had terrible troubles. England, very, very bad. But Germany, the Jewish population seems to be flourishing. Would you want to comment about that?
Sure. I think your observation is correct, except insofar as the current status. The current status was much worse. In Spain, you had a choice.
Oh, yeah.
Either you kill or you convert. And it was the same in Romania and Hungary. The situation is much improved. But the German situation is encouraging. I am in Germany very often. Nuremberg has been converted. The courthouse is used also as a museum. The court is still functioning. It's a civil court, a normal court. But there's a museum there. The German children are brought in periodically to all the schools, as they do with the Holocaust Museum in Washington, to see what's going on. My films are there. They're shown regularly to the Germans. I have lectured in Humboldt University and other universities in Germany. The young people in Germany are a little bit ashamed of what their parents did. They want to show that they're different. They are showing that they are different. And it's encouraging in a way. You know, the fact that they take a Jewish boy from Pennsylvania and give him the highest award, and I put him through the ringer on getting compensation for the survivors. That's a pretty good sign, you know? So I'm glad to report that, and it's again, it's an indication of what you can do if you try. How about you, young lady? You have a question?
I do. I want to go back to the trials. We as Americans, I was a little girl in those trials. We've seen films. We've seen some documentary films too. But I would like to get from you your personal assessment of what it was like. What were the people who were on trial, what were they like?
Good question.
Can people hear the question back there?
I will repeat it. I will repeat it.
Okay.
The question essentially is, what was the mentality of the Germans who were on trial? It's a very important question because the crimes that I've described were horrible, horrible. I mean, you burn people to death, and in crematoria you use their fat and make soap out of it. You use the ashes for fertilizer, the murdering of thousands of little children, and smashing their heads against a tree in order to save ammunition. And I've known the people who did the job, who were in charge, on the scene. And they were asked, why did you do that? Well, some of them said, who, me? Oh, I never heard of it. These were the ones I would have jumped over the podium and strangled if I could, right then and there. I didn't. But that was one group. Where the evidence was so overwhelming, in most cases, they didn't have the temerity and the chutzpah to really try that. Then there were other superior orders. What did you want me to do? I had to obey orders. I'm just a soldier. Not true. False. The German soldier book, which all of them carry, says you're required to obey legal orders. You're not required to obey illegal orders. And if you think it's legal to go down and start shooting a bunch of little kids in a ditch because they may still be alive, that is not a legal order. So the argument itself, although it was raised, it was a phony argument. Then there were the more sophisticated one. My friend, that friend really, wouldn't call him a friend, but he was more honest than most of them, Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, SS General. According to his reports, the outfit under his command killed 90,000 Jews. He also killed gypsies, the same way as Jews. When asked, why did you kill 90,000 Jews in your outfit? He said, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Your report, you're Dr. Ohlendorf, this is your outfit. Yes. But you know, the men sometimes bragged about the body count. What a giveaway. Instead of being ashamed, they were showing I killed even more. Look at me, give me a promotion. So there was the attitude on the part of the reporters who, I believe them, there were times they exaggerated, thinking they'd get even more credit for it. They were proud of what they did. Then there was Ohlendorf with the intellectual response. He said, look, we did it in self-defense. What do you mean self-defense? Nobody attacked Germany, you attacked Poland, you attacked France, you attacked Belgium, Holland, Norway, Sweden. What do you come off with self-defense? Well, we knew that the Russians intended to attack us, so we had to attack first. How did you know that? Hitler, he had the information. He said so. I didn't have the information, so I had to rely on what he said. And of course, we had to defend ourselves. That's called the preemptive self-defense in English, those of you who are going to be lawyers one day. And punitive Notstand in German, necessary self-defense. Well, the judges dealt with that. And there were 3 American judges in this particular case, learned judges, some of them, and they in a detailed opinion said, look, what kind of a world would you have if every time you think your neighbor is going to shoot you, you get up early in the morning and you're going to shoot him? And then you shoot his wife too, just to be sure. What kind of a world would this be? It would be total chaos. Everybody would be murdering everybody. And of course, they were sent to death, and Ohlendorf was hanged. I was invited to go to the hanging. I didn't go, but they sent me photographs. I have it. But what disturbs me quite a bit is that the quadrennial military review by the United States does not preclude presumed self-defense as a justification for going to war. That means that the argument which Ohlendorf made could be made by an American soldier as well if we attacked somebody in anticipation that we expected them to attack us. And I feel very bad that this Einsatzgruppen trial heading was the United States of America versus Otto Ohlendorf et al., Benjamin Ferencz, prosecutor. And I see that the quadrennial review put out by the Pentagon makes the same defense as a possibility. So it's not that easy. There are differences of opinion. I think there is no defense. It's a crime against humanity to use armed force illegally in violation of the UN Charter and should be punished criminally. Individuals are responsible for crime. Crimes don't commit themselves. They are done by individuals. We have to learn that you cannot kill an ideology with a gun. If you try, you will kill many innocent people. You'll have more enemies when you're through than you had before you started. And that's the system you're in. So there's a lot of need for change. And the change has to come, as it always had, from young students. That excludes some of the younger students in the first row here. Yes, sir.
This makes me think of the stand your ground law that they have in several states. Florida. Particularly in Florida, where we had that case last year. This fellow Zimmerman shot this young man who he thought was threatening him.
Well, we sentenced him to death for that, or whatever it is.
He got off scot-free.
He got off scot-free. There's miscarriage of justice. Okay. Who says justice is perfect? Let me give you a simple example. I had 3,000 mass murderers, 3,000. I could have had the roster of all of them. I didn't need them because I didn't want them. I tried 22. Why 22? We only had 22 seats in the dock. Sorry, boys. There's no more seats in the theater. You can't come in. What happened to the others?
did-
Nothing.
what did-
What happened to the others who were not sentenced to death and executed? There were a few executed. A few years later, they were turned loose. Where was justice? There was no justice. Or at best, you can have a small sample to make the idea contemptible. The idea of killing people in presumed self-defense is a contemptible idea. It's a dangerous idea. There's a miscarriage of justice for one reason or another. It happens all the time.
We have
But-
a question. I just want to make sure we get some students.
Okay.
We have a question back there, and then we have Brandon here. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there was a
Yep,
particular...
speak a little louder. This here is 95 years old.
Sorry. I just wanted to know if there was a particular part of the trial or a particular trial that haunted you, and if so, why?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, did you hear it?
No, what did she say?
Was there a particular trial or part of a trial that haunted you?
I am not haunted by anything, because I did my best. I think we laid down a landmark of justice, and being haunted is a superstition. You can't be haunted. If you see something's wrong, try to improve it. And you still think it's wrong, try harder. That's all.
Brandon?
Call him up.
All right, I'll try and speak loudly.
Thank you.
So I and many students here have been lucky enough to, through Brandeis, study international law at The Hague
Right.
and visit a lot of the tribunals in the International Criminal Court. And one of the cases we discussed in our studies was the case of Eichmann, including his abduction and
Yes.
being brought back to Israel for
Right.
trial and eventual execution. And I was curious to get your opinion on, while I do believe Eichmann was responsible for mass murder and was responsible for one of the greatest crimes in all of
You're asking me
humanity.
whether Eichmann was responsible for mass murder?
No, I am asking you whether or not that fact makes it okay that the procedure that led to his trial and eventual execution is inherently flawed as it involved kidnapping.
You're completely right that the seizure of Adolf Eichmann by agents of the Israeli government was illegal under international law and under ordinary principles of law. You can't go to another country because you suspect somebody, you grab them, wrap them up, put them in a box, take them home, and put them on trial. So that's my opinion. And that would be the opinion of most serious and objective international lawyers as well. However, the circumstances of the Eichmann case, which I personally think were exaggerated, he was a major in the SS, my boys were generals. But he was responsible for organizing the transport of Jews from Budapest to Auschwitz. He was an efficient guy, he did it well, and he managed to hide pretty successfully until they tracked him down. There was no legal way to get him extradited from Argentina because the treaties didn't have a treaty with Israel, didn't exist. So, the lesser of two evils, you know, a man is there who is responsible for playing an important role in sending thousands of people to their death, and no way under the law to do anything. So they grabbed him. They put him on trial and gave him a very fair trial. The trial was absolutely fair. Telford Taylor, who was my law partner, was a witness at the trial. Anna Eichmann wrote a long book about it. No one has ever challenged the legality of the trial per se. And so it was tolerated as being necessary because the international legal order was not yet developed sufficiently to enable states under those circumstances to obtain custody of the criminal. We're trying to fix that. We're trying to arrange with national jurisdictions to carry in their own national laws the same crimes which are prohibited in the international criminal courts. And that includes an undertaking to assist in the prosecution by surrendering the suspect so that he can have a fair trial. That is the process of change. And there are many imperfections along the way. That is one of them. But it's always the lesser of the evils. You do the best you can.
Mike?
Yes, so just, what were your thoughts on the use of the death penalty at the Nuremberg trials, and have your thoughts changed in the years since?
I was faced with the problem of what do I recommend by way of penalty. I did not ask for the death penalty. That has often been misinterpreted. It was not that I didn't think they deserved it. It was that it would be inadequate. And inadequate because here I have 22 men charged with top responsibility for murdering 1 million people. What did they say? Chop them into 1 million pieces and feed them to the dogs. I wouldn't have objected, but of course that was beyond the realm of reality. And so I thought, what? And I struggled with that question. And that was my decision, personally. What would make this trial more significant? It would, instead of killing these 20 guys, what difference would that make? They're not going to commit the crimes again and again. The deterrent effect was clear from the trial itself. I said, if we could develop a rule of law which would protect humankind in the future, that would be of value to everyone forever. And that's exactly what I tried to do in the opening statement then. And when the International Criminal Court was finally created in The Hague after about 50 years of effort on my part as well as many others, the Chief Prosecutor, Luis Moreno Ocampo, who was here working at Harvard not long ago, asked me to do the closing statement for the prosecution. And I did. I was then 92 years old. And so the first case I was 27, the second one I was 92. And I repeated the same thing. A plea of humanity to law, that the law be used as the instrumentality for protecting humankind at all times. And the death penalty comparison is not important.
Hi. Earlier you spoke about the 22 people that you prosecuted, and I've always been really interested in the idea of representative justice and how that plays into command responsibility. So how do you feel about command responsibility being used in international cases today?
Command responsibility, the question is, what do I do about command responsibility? There is no valid defense on command responsibility. It's no excuse. And you were commanded to do an act which you should have known was illegal. You're guilty of the crime. It's a phony excuse. Besides, it's phony in fact, because the fact that they bragged about the body count showed they were doing it enthusiastically. It was not something they were coerced into doing, otherwise they would be shot themselves. I don't know of any case where a man was shot because he didn't kill Jews. None, not one. So that argument that, command responsibility, what else could I do? That's a lot of baloney. Getting cold here tonight. This guy's got a book of this.
I actually have two questions. My first one is, some people argue that since the Yugoslav tribunal through to the ICC and the Lebanon tribunal today, the efficiency and the effectiveness of the criminal tribunals has gone downhill. That there have been sentencing issues, the unraveling of the Nkujolo trial, etc. I was just wondering, my first question is, what response do you have to that? And my second question, just really briefly, is that there are a lot of people here who have spent significant time studying international criminal law in The Hague. And I was wondering if, just for their benefit, if you could tell the story of the title of the movie, Watchers of the Sky.
Okay. First one, what do I think about the courts not being so efficient? Of course they're not efficient. They're newborn babes. What do you want? They have no experience. You get a newborn babe, you're going to have to wash it every day and wipe it down. And it's the same with the courts. There'll be judges who are not experienced. It'll be difficult to know what's expected of them, etc. These are growing pains. That will happen. If you doubt it, just look. Remember, when the first computer was made, it was in a room this size. Now you carry it in your pocket. What a change. Now let's answer your second question. What is the theme of Watchers of the Skies? So you don't have to go to the movie. The title comes from a book I have called Watchers of the Sky. I don't know whether the producer of the film are aware where it came from. And it's a book of poetry of a British author, Alfred Noyes, N-O-Y-E-S, not N-O-I-S-E. And he tells the story there of a number of scientists, Galileo, Copernicus, Danish astronomer named Tycho Brahe. And in the Tycho Brahe story, there's this young Danish man, and he wants to discover the meaning of the universe. And he builds special telescopes, and he persuades the king to let him build an observatory on the island of Hven, which is near where Hamlet, Elsinore is located. He builds it there, and he goes there and he studies the stars. He becomes a watcher of the sky. And he makes a chart of everything that he sees. And he does that for about 20 years. And then the old king dies and a new king comes on the throne. It says the examiner's out. And they say, hey, old man, wake up. Because watchers of the sky, as you know, astronomers, they work by night, they sleep by day. You wake them up and say, what have you been doing for these last 20 years? Well, I've been watching the stars. Why have you been watching the sky? Well, I am charting the stars and have it very exact. Everyone is very precise. But what do you hope to achieve? He said, well, I have 99 already. I hope to achieve 100 if I live long enough. Well, what's the use of it? Well, he said, I'm not sure. He said, I hope that I'll be able to discover the meaning of the universe. Well, I haven't done that yet, but someday somebody will. And I will have saved that person 25 years of labor. That's the theme of Watchers of the Skies. What I don't think is mentioned in the film, I saw an early production, I haven't seen the newest one, is the PS. PS. We used to say the impossible. It's like going to the moon. Well, one day, an American astronaut landed on the moon. And they had with them the tables of Tycho. I'm sorry, but I am emotionally involved with it too. And to see him holding up the American flag on the moon, you know, with the tables of Tycho and the landing place named after Tycho, that moved me enough so that I tell the story in the film. And that became the title of the film. And what did it tell me and what did it tell you? Don't let them tell you anything is impossible. It's possible to do the impossible. And it's possible to have a peaceful world governed by law instead of war. So never give up on trying to do the impossible.
Well, I think we should all thank our
On that
guests.
happy note,